But I have the esteemed honor of introducing our next keynote speaker. Ms. Derecka Burnell is a human rights lawyer, scholar, and author of Becoming Abolitionist, Police Protest and the Pursuit of Freedom. Purnell received her JD from Harvard Law School, her BA from the University of Missouri, Kansas City, and studied public policy and economics at the University of California, Berkeley, as a public policy and international affairs law fellow. Her writing has been published widely, including in the Oxford Handbook of Race and Law in the United States, the Harvard Journal of African American Policy, the New York Times, the Atlantic, the New York Magazine, Boston Review, Teen Vogue, and Harper's Bazaar. Purnell has lectured, studied, and strategized around social movements across the United States, the Netherlands, Belgium, South Africa, the United Kingdom, and Australia. In 2022, she was selected as a Freedom Scholar for the Marjorie Casey Foundation. Please, without further ado, let's welcome Ms. Derecka Burnell.
Hi, everyone. Okay, never mind. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Oh, my gosh. Good morning. Raise your hand if you're tired. Okay. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here this morning. It's interesting when you're invited to give a keynote in a place where you live, because your morning routine is still like your morning routine. You have to do regular stuff, and then you have to be like, oh, right, I have this very important commitment. And so I feel really grateful to be here as someone who lives in the district. So thank you to Joel and to Priya for the invitation. Thank you for all the sisters who ushered me through like the Conference Underground Railroad to the back so I can get to the stage. I really appreciate that. And I just want to say thank you to people like Miriam Kaba, Woods Irvin, and Rachel Gilmer, who really pushed me and helped me think critically about the role and work of transformative justice. Oh, hey, hi, look at my coworkers right here. Y'all wasn't gonna tell me y'all were here? That's wild. We work together. Okay, anyway, thank you so much for allowing me to be here. I think that I want to start by just being completely honest about where I am in this particular moment. And that the speech that I was really excited to give, that I was thinking about maybe since April or May, is not the speech that ultimately I'm giving today, but I think that what I'm going to talk about today is more true to how I'm feeling right now, and during Q&A, you can let me know what you think as well. I have become obsessed with the theme of this conference, reaching 7 generations in the past and 7 generations into the future. And as a student of and organizers within social movements, I am constantly thinking about what is required from us, based upon our tradition and the future that we will inherit because of our work. I think about the future in the same way that I think about a party, right? Not a political party, but like a house party. And if you get invited to a house party, you want to know who all gonna be there. So that is how I approach when I think about the future. Who all gonna be there? Is it gonna be us? And when thinking about 7 generations into the future, I cannot help but think, will we be there? And will this planet be there? Will it include this earth? This earth is on fire, and I can't help at least but to think about the connections between restorative justice, climate change, capitalism, colonialism, and what is required of us to ensure the best future possible. There are many fires right now. In my neighborhood in DC, as you all have probably felt in your breaks or if you stepped outside because of the heat wave that we're in. Raise your hand if you're here from California. Okay, shout out to Cali, shout out to Kendrick Lamar. California right now is experiencing a wildfire, the 5th largest on record for the state. The wildfire in California right now is larger than the city of Los Angeles, and it's 12 times the size of San Francisco. There's a fire in my hometown of St. Louis, Missouri right now, as we approach the 10-year anniversary of when Michael Brown Sr. and Leslie McSpadden lost their baby, Michael Brown Jr., to police violence on August 9th in 2014. There are fires in Gaza, in the West Bank, in Yemen, in Congo, Sudan, and most recently, Lebanon. So why do I feel so convicted to consider the fires this time at a convening with here all of you today when we're here to discuss restorative justice? I believe they have everything to do with each other, and we are responsible for these connections. On August 9th, not 2014, but 1944, the federal government created Smokey the Bear. Raise your hand if you know Smokey the Bear. Okay, good, I got some people with me. What was Smokey the Bear's slogan? Okay, let's go, only you. And you remember the hat and the finger, right? It's conflicting because like a cute bear, but then it's a judgmental finger. So this is what the federal government in California created as a campaign to quote unquote reduce forest fires. Now, I'm from the Midwest, so deserts, swamps, oceans, forest fires only existed on television. But the campaign was more so a propaganda opportunity to protect acres and acres upon land that companies wanted to use to cut down and sell for profit. You can't sell a tree that's turned to ashes. The fires threaten their businesses, and their business of cutting down trees caused more fires. You see, trees provide shade and absorb carbon dioxide to keep the planet cool. When corporations cut down trees, the planet gets warmer. So Smokey the Bear was actually a colonial campaign to discourage indigenous peoples from setting fires to the land where trees could be sold for profit. Beginning in 1950, California went even further and banned ritualistic and cultural burnings of forest land by tribes. Before these burnings were criminalized, tribes used to set small, intentional fires to clear all the parts of the forest that were decaying that were more likely to catch fire in later seasons. These controlled burnings decreased the kind of wild, raging fires that California is experiencing right now and that occur every year. But so that corporations could make money, California threatened indigenous people with arrest and jail for trying to save it. More than 12,000 years of native land management practices and systems and environmental flourishing nearly all went up in flames. To make matters worse, California began using prison labor to fight the fires that they helped to create years before. The carceral system became the response to the capitalist system that was the problem that colonialism created. And how many of you know that in the United States, when there's a crisis, they come running to the people who have the indigenous wisdom and knowledge to try to fix it? Instead of solving the underlying problems of deforestation and corporate exploitation of the earth, California responded by putting a cute bear on television and sending prisoners into the fires to risk their lives. The failure of the state in the federal fire suppression only started forcing officials to rethink their land management practices and decriminalize some intentional burnings in 2019. With great relief, there are people using important indigenous practices and technologies today to help offset some of the wildfires. Now, what does this have to do with restorative justice? When I think about the effort to rely on this decades, centuries, millennial-old technology and wisdom to help save the forest, I feel anger and I feel opportunity. I feel anger because had the land remained in the stewardship of the tribes, we would have a cleaner earth. But now, in panic, officials want to incorporate these indigenous practices to save the crises of capitalism. Instead of true decolonization or the refusal to let capitalists continue to heat up the earth, the state is attempting to sprinkle some indigenous wisdom on top of the crisis, or alongside its harmful reality. It's sort of similar, in my view at least, to a land acknowledgement, that we understand the crises that are facing us, And when it's time to pay attention to it, to fight, what do? We sprinkle it on top of our statements, on top of our emails, on top of our speeches, on top of our introductions. But I also think that this is a potential opportunity for restorative justice. In order to reach back 7 generations and then to stretch 7 generations forward, we cannot simply sprinkle the wisdom and technology of our ancestors, including restorative justice, on top of our current systems of colonialism, capitalism, and the carceral state. Justice requires that we eliminate the root causes as we're building the world that we all deserve. For our work to be effective alongside these systems, we have to be intentional and do all of the practices that so many of you are doing every day. But if we truly want to build a just world and to practice restorative justice to the fullest extent possible, we must be wholly committed to eliminating the carceral state. No more sprinkling on top of it if we want to reach backward and forward. We have to be committed to learning about and building the world that we call restorative justice, a world without capitalism, colonialism, and the carceral state. We have to start the right kinds of fires to achieve that world, and part of it includes an abolitionist framework. Now, when I say abolition, I mean the commitment and practice to eradicate capitalist, colonial, community-based, and climate-based violence at the same time, over time, until it's obsolete. It means that in addition to doing all of the important life-saving work that you are all doing today, we would do the work long-term to develop a just analysis to end suffering and to join or support causes that do. So let's talk about trees in DC. The hottest neighborhoods in DC are the poorest and the blackest. There is up to a 20-degree difference for how some people experience the exact same day. If you're in Southeast, where I lived when I first came to DC, you're more likely to experience high utility bills, less trees, less green space, higher rates of segregation, and population density. To quote my second favorite rapper, Lil Wayne, the block is hot. Hot blocks lead to more disputes, more conflicts, more violence, more policing, more imprisonment, more suffering. Combined with the density of segregated neighborhoods, these lead to nearly insufferable outcomes. Stressed out adults, stressed out children, all hurting each other, all taking care of each other, all still somehow while providing and scraping what they can to survive. This is true everywhere, but especially in a nation where there are more guns than there are people. By one estimate in David Wallace Wells' The Uninhabitable Earth, which I highly recommend, climate change in the United States will bring about, and please, this is when you need to lean into these numbers. Climate change in the United States will bring an additional 22,000 murders, 180,000 rapes, 3.5 million assaults, 3.76 million robberies, burglaries, and acts of larceny. The heat is killing us, and it's impacting how we kill each other. The weight and the activities of corporations and billionaires all come bearing down on the individuals who end up in your folders, in your classrooms, in your offices, in your hearts, in your cages, and in your circles. It comes bearing down on us, too. That's why I asked you when I got here if you were tired. So raise your hand if you said you were tired. Raise your hand if you're tired right now. You're tired while I'm telling you that you're tired, right now. Yet you have taken up nearly an impossible task. On top of the conditions that make us suffer, you all help us navigate the principles of this organization: fairness, balance, decency, respect, dignity. But if you're tired, just don't stay tired for too long, because we need people who are fired up. We need people who are willing to set the necessary fires of the systems that cause us pain, that make it too easy for us to hurt each other. Fire is neutral. It can take a teenager's life on a poor suburban street through a bullet, like it did with Michael Brown. It can burn down a hospital after a bomb has been dropped. It can sterilize a medical tool. It can save a forest, and it can start a revolution. If we want to ensure that your clients and members can live the lives that they deserve, and that each and every one of you can live those lives too, then we have to ensure that the 7 generations ahead of us live in order to see that option. Every single person here must be committed to a movement to eradicate capitalism, colonialism, and climate change. We can't just sprinkle this on top of it. We have to fight it. Well, the question is how, right? It's not like you took a class in college that was like how to stop capitalism. At least I did it at UMKC, right? Well, first, we know that we need to join a political home. A political home is a place that's not necessarily your employer, your institution, because again, many of you, like my mom would tell me when I graduated law school, girl, who gonna pay you to end capitalism? Who gonna pay you to abolish the police? Who gonna pay you to do that? And I'm like, mama, that's not my job, like for my job, but it's my job in life, you know? And so I encourage you all to find a political home to help sharpen and develop an analysis around these systems if you don't already have one. Because your political home, that's where your ethical commitment lies for you to support or join campaigns around these crises. A political home is where you debate and learn how to disagree better. It's supposed to polarize, but polarize with the purpose of creating conceptual clarity around an idea. That is the purpose of a political home. One good example of that is an organization like Sunrise, right? So many youth have been inspired to join an organization like Sunrise because they feel moved and compelled to organize for a future that we can ensure will be here. Because right now, that future is uncertain. So we have to create and join political homes that give us the room to experiment and fight for the world that we believe in. Another thing we have to do is defend the commons. When we lose free and publicly available land, services, it drives up the cost of living for everyone. Now, if you've been driving around DC, you probably have noticed there are lots of nice apartment buildings, right? And these apartment buildings, I don't know if y'all know this, they have these things called amenities. Do y'all know what amenities are? No, real talk, do y'all know? Like game room, club room, pool, sauna, fitness center, rooftop pool, underground pool. They're amenities. And so all of these buildings all have their own set of amenities, while the recreation centers, right, where all of our community members can enjoy, suffer, right? We have to fight to keep them clean. We have to fight to have our parks clean and have green space, while all of these routes have green space. There's no green spaces on top of the projects in D.C., right? So this is what I mean when defend and protect the commons. When those things become private and privatized, not only does it lead to more climate catastrophe, it also chips away at the democratic control of our communities and what makes us whole. We take those frustrations out of ourselves, blame ourselves for what we can and cannot accumulate, for whether we can and cannot pay rent, or the light bill, or the daycare bill, and these result in tensions when we show up and we figure out, how did this lead to me harming somebody? We have to change this. We have to do this while creating new commons. After I wrote Becoming Abolitionist, I took a trip to the Redwoods because when I was a little girl, my mom and my Aunt Lana wanted me to see this IMAX movie at the Science Center. And I was mesmerized by these trees that felt like dinosaurs. They were 300 and 350 feet tall. During the tour and the hike, the nature guide who was walking us said, don't stray off the path. Because even though redwoods are 350 feet tall, some of their roots are only 6 feet deep. So do you know how strong something has to be to withhold something that is 350 feet tall? Just for example, these plants, these roots, let's say, are maybe like 8 inches, nearly a feet. So for something that's taller than the size of this building to be the height of Steph Curry, it's kind of remarkable, okay, to be held up. What's beautiful about that is that those roots, even though they're not just deep, they run far and wide. They communicate to each other. There's a mother tree. And we only call it a mother tree because we're human, then we project the way that we construct our society onto living creatures. But the purpose of this tree is to assess the health of every single tree in that forest and to redistribute nutrients to save each other. When something dies, when a tree falls, they cover it and create a whole new sub-ecosystem to make sure every single creature can survive and nourish from it. They redistribute in order to keep the harmony in the forest and nothing is wasted. No tree can dominate. And it's unironic that if we look at the indigenous practices that birth restorative justice, pre-colonization, pre-capitalism, pre the carceral state, we find the same harmonious relationships. We know that they were a small A, thank you to this person, I appreciate that. They were a small A anarchist society. They primarily function not from a domination perspective, but from a social cohesion custom that ensured that everyone contributed to the society through specific roles. We know that they were small C communistic. People worked, but did not have to sell their labor in order to get food or housing or clothing or health care. David Graeber and David Wengrow, this incredible book called The Dawn of Everything, they write about when Europeans make first contact with the indigenous people living here. And there was almost no word initially in the translations to describe poverty and suffering, which was so prevalent in the UK and France, right? The indigenous people here couldn't wrap their heads around how people are hungry, people are sleeping out. Wait, what? How is that? Could not even imagine it, that people were unsheltered. And so the conditions that produced restorative justice were deeply rooted in community connections where people had all of their needs met. And this is what I mean that we can't just sprinkle it on top. We have to be committed to restoring the communities that made restorative justice possible if we are to live truly to its purpose. The last feature that we see is a harmonious relationship to the earth. There can be no true justice unless there is justice between us and the planet. It will, thank you. It will come back to haunt us. It will come back to increase the violence between us. And we will be there to figure out if it's possible and if it's sustainable for us to keep doing the work that we decide to do. This is what's at stake with our work. This is what's at stake with restorative justice. This is what is at stake with our planet. And if we plan to have 7 generations from now, we better get busy. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all so much. We have like 12 minutes for Q&A if you all are interested, or I can go run my regular errands and get my car inspected. So I will leave that option up to you. So if you have a question, please raise your hand so that we can have a dialogue. Yeah, well, yes, of course. Well, I think right here. I would just say to keep it brief to make sure that a lot of people can.
No, my comment is just your comment. The way you've tied everything together was just beautiful. So if you didn't hear me clapping throughout the whole thing, it's because I'm captivated and I'm seeing you connect all these things in ways that are surprising but make sense. And just thank you. It was amazing.
Of course, thank you.
I was going to say your speech was fire, but you know.
Thank you. I think right here in the red cap.
Hi, yes, I just want to say thank you for everything that you shared. It was soul moving. I recently read your book this year.
Thank you.
As a judge, it is a book that I think really has transformed how I look at everything. And it is something that I think that anyone in the system needs to be reading to rethink and relearn how we navigate in space and create community and truly begin to heal. So I was wondering if you would share a little bit more about your view of what a visionary future looks like. I know you end your book on it,
Yeah.
but I think it would be really beautiful to hear in this space where you are in this moment in your life, what that looks like for you.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much. Just for FYI, if you decide to get Becoming Abolitionist, please get it from a library or steal it. You can steal it right by now online. If you work with people who are incarcerated, if you reach out to the publisher, they'll make sure they'll get a copy inside for free. So that's very important to me. I think that, thank you. Right now, I have been consumed with the idea of possession and dispossession. And I have been very frustrated that in order to achieve justice, the language that we primarily use is disparity, and that we're trying to close gaps, typically between white people and black people. And somehow it's conditioned us to think that justice is what white people have. And I suffer from that, because then our solutions are about accumulation. It's about how do we get more black home ownership when private homes are killing the earth. And there can be no solution that is just for black people that is harmful to the planet. And so I have been thinking deeply about cooperatives, about land trusts, about federated societies, around trying to build power and protect ourselves. And it's very overwhelming, and I feel very lucky to be thinking with people who've been thinking about this for decades. And it's, I don't know, it's weird to be like, how it's like to write a book, but that's a weird thing to say, because I don't know if you read a book, but you put 100,000 words into the universe, and then you keep growing, and then you keep learning, and you're like, oh man, but now we have to connect abolition to these other principles, and we have to do it urgently. So I feel very, very excited to figure out not what I'm hopeful for, but what's required of me right now, and that's what I'm thinking a lot about. Thank you.
I want to thank you for honoring our ancestors, and I'm originally from California, so I do a lot of the work with many of the reservations out there.
Okay.
So I want to honor you. I want to thank you for honoring that, and also 7 generations back, 7 generations forward is a reality for a lot of our indigenous folks. But I just love the way you just tied everything together. So it's not a question. I just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to say thank you very much for doing that. Appreciate it.
Oh, no, thank you so much. I think right here in the middle. Michelle, is that you? I think we should do a mic. Let's do a mic.
Thank you. I'm just echoing what everyone else said, but then I'm also adding and inviting, if you can publish what you just what you just gave us as a speech, because more than just a speech, it's a resource for us, right? Aww. So we're taking notes, but I wasn't videotaping it, but this is an opportunity for us to bring this back to our communities, share this language, this word, and the way that you tied it together, so that we can continue to build in this way. So if you could do that, I don't know if you can put it up on your website, just this is the speech that I did at NACRJ, that would be super helpful to our community.
Oh, that's so sweet. Okay, how about this? I think I'm willing to do that on one condition. I'm willing to do that on a condition that the people in this room who are interested in that create a working group to then brainstorm how it all works together. Because me publishing one thing, I think everyone then gets to take it away and do their own thing with it. But I think we can build more power if people are just, it could be we can make that something so much more interesting, so much more beautiful. So thank you so much for that invitation. I'll be willing to share only if someone decides to do a working group. And then I will share it with the working group, and then y'all can do what y'all want with it. Thank you. Yes. Can't believe you're going to show up all in my city.
We're going to talk. To piggyback on what the sister was just asking you and to your answer about doing a working group, my question was going to be, how so we, loud and clear talking about ending capitalism, right? This is not the first time I heard you say this, working for years. And so my question is, how do we do that while we're active participants in it, right? I mean, you talk about your mom saying to you, who's going to pay you to do that? I mean, I don't know about you, but like one of the things that, when we're looking for jobs is how much are they paying, right? We want our children to go to prestigious schools, and like we're actively participating in this system that we know is not good for us, and we gotta, we're trying to dismantle it. But so like, I'm just trying to figure like what's our first step? Like, how do we start?
Love this question so much. Thank you so much. Okay, all right. Raise your hand if you're a supervisor. Some supervisors, don't be shy. Okay, cover your ears right now. Cover your ears, okay. If you have not unionized your workplace, unionize your workplace. That's not going to end capitalism. But we do need worker power. I don't care who you work for. I don't care if they say we're all a family. I don't care if we say we don't have room for that in this place. Unionize your workplaces. Okay, supervisors, you're welcome back to the conversation. Don't get in their way. I don't know, just don't get in their way. So there's that. I think that we are all complicit to a particular degree. I don't have the same level of complicity as Elon Musk. I don't have the same complicity as someone who flies in a private jet, who dumps all the CO2 into the. So we have varying level degrees of complicity. And my fear is that sometimes this idea that we're all complicit then just allows people to be like, well, I'm complicit because I have an income. But if you're like me, you probably sell your labor in order to get an income. And if you sell your labor in order to pay rent, then your relationship to capitalism is very different than the people who purchase your labor, right? So that is a very important analysis, like understanding that, well, I know that I'm better off than some people because I live in the global north, like I stay in the Upper West Side, like whatever it is, I work at Columbia, but that shouldn't stop us from then building real, actual campaigns to undermine the privatization of our land, of our schools, of all of that. We can still be a part of a campaign to shift resources from private institutions to public ones and fighting to defend the commons. I think one of the earliest steps to do that is to join a political home that is committed to interrogating capitalism and coming up with a strategy. Because before I went to law school, I thought it was enough to be a good person. And if you're a good person with a good heart, you're probably going to do the right thing. But that's not enough. We need good people with good analyses, because the analyses then help to form the strategy. And that's why we need all these people to figure out, well, what is our strategy? What is the relationship between capitalism and restorative justice? If we know that capitalism, for the people who can't be exploited anymore, pushes them out of the labor market, and where do they end up? In jails, in prisons, right? The people who are arrested and rearrested have incomes of $10,000 or less. So not only are they excluded from the labor market, their exclusion becomes a jobs program for the carceral state. This is why prisons panic when the population starts to drop. Their jobs that population also is a jobs program for who? For lawyers, for judges, for many of us in this room, including me. So then it's like, well, I don't want to push too much because now my labor is connected. But we can't let that stop us, which is why your job, even if it's your income, you have to be connected to an organization external to it, who's thinking about this, who's strategically planning and thinking about fighting this, and is willing to do the risky campaigns of pushing back on those people, electing people who are not just trying to protect more corporate interests, who are really fighting for the people. There's so many incredible ways, but you have to have a political home and we have to get organized. And thank you. I feel bad because y'all making eye contact with me, but I don't have the power. It's the people with the mics. So make eye contact with Donald, Eric. Yes. All right.
Hi, my name is Mariana Miller, and I thank you so much for your words. It's very inspiring, super inspiring. And talking about a political home and piggyback on the last person that commented, I would like to know if anybody in this room is interested or knows anybody that works to lobby or organizes for federally funded elections. I think that's the beginning of the end of capitalism. That's my opinion, but I don't have a lot of time, but if somebody is already doing that, I would love to join. So thank you so much.
Yes, so raise your hand, just really quickly. If you know someone who's working on federally funded, oh my gosh, I do actually know a person. His name is slipping right now. But yes, if people can continue to just have corporations as people to then pay for candidates, then we're not going to have the type of campaign finance reform that we needed to elect people. So primarily, we're relying on people power. But I think you're absolutely right onto something, and I think that is 100% a strategy that we need to develop. And I think there's a way that connects with restorative justice, right, and democracy, and who gets to advocate on behalf of themselves. And so I think that's an incredible another working group. If y'all are interested, please see this person right here. Look, we doing work today. We got 2 working groups already.
Real quick, before the next question, I had a comment from the crowd. They wanted to know if they have your book, will you be available for book signing?
Wait, say it one more time?
If they have your book already, would you be available at some point for book signing?
If I will be available to?
Sign their books.
Oh, yeah, of course, yes.
So I have a 2-part question. I've just been having all of the emotions and feelings this past week, and everything that you said really resonated with where I've been. And so I guess the first part of this question is something that's just been weighing really heavily on me. And that's, how do we go about having the conversation about all of these things and the harm, and how all of those harms are interconnected to every other harm with our kids? Like, I can't even fathom having to tell my kid all of these things about the world while also knowing that I have to. And that's part of, like, raising a radical child to do radical things. But how would we have those questions or have those conversations? And then the second part of the conversation, or of my question, is how do we find a political home that has all of these radical views? I mean, I'm in California in the Bay Area, so I know there's a bunch. But that's something that I've also been looking for, and so much of them are still like tied to capitalism or like, you know, all of these different things. So those are my questions.
No, great question. Great question. So I don't know how much time we're supposed to have. Michelle, is that you? Oh, I was trying to see if that's Michelle, sorry. I don't know. No one's directing me. Okay, I'll answer this question. So I really appreciate the feedback that I'm able to make a lot of these connections, like, very simply. And I owe that to my children. I have a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old, Juice and Garvey. Garvey will want me to tell you guys that he's a Scorpio. He's very proud of being a Scorpio. And from very early on, I wondered about that as a parent, about like, oh, do I protect them? Do I hide them? Or do I bring them in? And I realized very early that in a lot of cartoons, it's very easy to think about there's a villain and there's a hero. And so I just use that to show, oh, this person's a capitalist and this person's an organizer. Because now his entire framework is like, oh, clearly organizers are the superheroes and the capitalists are the people who are terrible. Like, that is his analysis, that's his worldview. So by the time he's 10 now, by the time he was 7, he was able to articulate, oh yeah, well, we want workers to win, right? Why wouldn't we want workers to be in control of their time? That just feels wrong. Like, why? You know, so his concept of a thief was not someone who was poor, but someone who steals labor, right? Like that, and children can get that, and adults can get that too. Adults just tend to feel at least helpless about what to do or complicit. But he's just like, oh, like this is wrong. So gender, right? I write a little bit about this in the book. When I was in school, every day is good morning, boys and girls, good morning, boys and girls, good morning, boys and girls. So you grow up your whole life thinking there's boys and there's girls. So when you meet someone who's trans and non-binary as an adult, you're like, this is wrong. This is evil. This is violent. This is disgusting. This person should die. This person shouldn't exist. And so then as a young kid, you say, oh yeah, well, there's all kind of people. When you tell me you have a crush, and I go, oh, is it a boy or girl or non-binary, right? Because now it's just like, what's normal, what's possible is that, oh yeah, anyone can like me, or I can like anyone. It's not, so I think with children, it's actually very, very, very easy to do that. I think it's much easier to do that in community and to do that intentionally. But then you get into weird things, like Garvey got into a fight because he called a kid a capitalist on the playground because he didn't want to share a scooter. And then the parent comes across the street and it's like, what? Like I guess he called my kid a name, but I don't even know, like, what was he talking about? I was like, oh, well, in my house, there's no my toy, your toy. We all share toys, and we negotiate how much time. And now I'm like, okay, I have to teach him that's not how everyone else experiences, because people get rewarded with individual private accumulation. So then something's your toy. And Garvey's like, but he just gets to act like a little capitalist. And I was like, well, he has to learn. And Garvey's 7. So I think there's lots of possibility with children, and I get so excited thinking about, like, that possibility. And I would love to think about this with you more. I think in terms of your political home question, I think one thing I can also do, in addition to the speech and the stuff around climate change, is pull together a group of organizations that I think are doing really good work. I, interestingly, feel in a very similar place. That the organization that I want to be a part of, I don't think exists yet. And I think that's an exciting thing, because there are lots of people who I think who want to be a part of something like that too. And so I've been working with a group of people that's like, all right, y'all, what are we doing? Like, are we building 1,000 utopias? Are we building co-ops? Are we building federal? Like, what are we doing? So for the last, 3 years, have been in deep study trying to figure this stuff out. And so I can share some organizations I really deeply trust in that list. And then if something comes out in the future, in the next 6 months to a year, I will be excited to share that too. Well, thank you. Oh, we're getting the music? Thank you all so much.